Welcome back to the archives of history of the universe. Which universe? The Whoniverse. And if there's one question that's been plaguing your mind ever since you've joined this mental series, it's how much did the Brigadier fuck? Did he get any? I've been on the wiki and can confirm the Brigadier fucks. For some reason, the Matrix has even documented the loss of his virginity to a lovely girl named Vera, drunk on a night out. At some undisclosed date, Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart also abandoned a son called Mariama, who was born to him by the daughter of the chief, Mariatu. Delightful. And sometime in the 1960s, he had a romantic encounter with a Doris from Brighton Beach. Great stuff. So, why does no one talk about the time that Brigadier went to the underworld to battle Hades for the love of Persephone? Oh, you want some context on that, don't you? In the book Deadly Reunion, not the first time I've spoken about it either. Shortly after the events of World War II, a young Brigadier ended up in Albania in a mission against Stalinist rebels. Here, decades before meeting the Doctor, he ran into the Immortals and fell in love with the Greek fucking god of myth, Persephone. The couple spent 2 weeks together before she reluctantly wiped his memory. And yes, this is the same book that claimed that the Doctor and the Master had a pop band. Maybe the Nazis were right. Maybe we should burn books. This isn't the craziest thing I found about the Brigadier though. Matrix? Ah, that's a bummer. Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart supposedly died in the year 2012. And commemorating the death of real-life actor Nicholas Courtney fell to Stephen Moffat, whose run really hadn't addressed the Brigadier or unit at all. In fact, it was a tribute so important to Moffat, he continued it until he gave up the role of showrunner in 2017. Some of them very tactful, some of them less so. In the Day of the Doctor novelisation, Moffat tries something. Kate Stewart watched the Doctor and Clara go, and kept the frown off her face. The change of mood was quite striking. "God, I miss that man," her father had said in his final illness. "Maybe he'll visit tomorrow." She could never decide over the years if those were the best or the saddest last words. She fought down the memory of the dying old soldier in the hospice. "Maybe tomorrow." "I'm sorry," said a voice in her head, and it almost froze her. She'd been briefed about the Doctor's occasional telepathy. Low level, they said, and rarely used. "I miss him too." Supposedly, there was a whole telepathic conversation going on in that scene in The Day of the Doctor. A bit of a stretch, but I'm there for it. A great recontextualization. But that's actually a lovely dynamic. We know the Doctor doesn't do goodbyes, so why? What day, what version of him could possibly be whole enough to say goodbye to the Brigadier? What incarnation would have the right words to say? But also, hang about, if the Brigadier died in 2012, how did 8 meet him in 2017? Wow, it's almost as if canon is an ever-changing, arbitrary and pointless exercise. Did anyone tell him he's meant to be dead and buried? And a Cyberman. Some sources claimed he lived to the 2050s, which is very, very lovely and very, very unlikely. As a Fleshman, not as a Cyberman, I should say. Christ, it's so weird that his wiki just has a section that says, "Life as a Cyberman." But don't worry, the 2015 comic Fractures confirms that the Brigadier blew himself up so he could never hurt anyone. Why is that a detail I ever needed to know? Nobody liked that twist, guys. You don't have to tell me how the Cyber Brigadier, beloved icon of the show and fan favourite, his brain just exploded into a million pieces in the atmosphere. A defiled corpse, no less. But at the same time, don't feel too sorry for him. Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart and Nicholas Courtney were not the same person. This is still a beloved fan favourite character who commit genocide. But we don't like to talk about that, do we? That's fair enough. The Doctor doesn't like to either. He was mad at it for about 3 minutes. But when Harriet Jones does it... Oh. Recently, I have been watching Hellbent, like, a lot. It's gone from being a 2 out of 10 story for me to being like a 5 out of 10 to like the last few weeks. I'm starting to think that maybe it's actually a masterpiece. Yeah, lockdown's doing funny things to me, but something I did not expect to feel sorry for is the Veil. Because the Veil shouldn't even be a thing, right? It's a construct of the Doctor's nightmares. But no, the Veil was a autonomous being, a clockwork construct, like most of Moffat's villains. And it's in Hellbent we find out this incredibly evadable Night Terror was put there by the Time Lords. Hey, wouldn't it make more sense if it was just a part of the confession dial? Yeah, probably, but this is Doctor Who, a series where extraneous after-the-fact material is just added on all the time. But you know what? This one's a goodie. Doctor Who magazine has this great column called The Blogs of Doom, where they take a seemingly minor character and show you things from their perspective. Jonathan Morris wanted to take on the stalking Veil from Heaven Sent. The Veil apparently didn't even know what the hybrid was or why its masters wanted to learn more about it, but it hoped it wouldn't take long to get to the prisoner. Meaning it has its own agency. The Time Lords briefed it about the Doctor. And through its first-person perspective, we find it's actually a rather benevolent creature following instructions and wishing the Doctor no harm, who apparently tries to help him as the loops go on and on, realising soon it's just as much a prisoner as the Doctor himself.
Well shit, this backfired.
By the beginning 7,000th year, the Veil has realised the Doctor's plan and decides to help him speed up his escape. Ever wonder where the spade in the garden came from? Why wouldn't the Doctor just use that to break down the diamond wall? That was placed there by the Veil. This kind of feels like a cannon plaster, like, hey, why didn't he just use the spade? The answer for that, the character reason, is because the Doctor wanted to punish himself. So yeah, the Veil is a tragic figure. Serious or not, I bet you can't ever watch that episode the same way again. And last of all, let's talk dragons. The Doctor does not believe in dragons, despite fighting them frequently. It's just hilarious how certain the Doctor is, no, dragons could never exist. See also, ghosts. The Doctor is certain that ghosts don't exist, but the show seems more consistent on that, as many incarnations agree. Ghosts just don't exist, they're unscientific. But Doctor Who is sci-fi fantasy, and sometimes it leans into that fantasy more than you'd like. And then we have flying dragons.
But Sam, they're not dragons, they're just aliens who we call dragons.
Yes, sometimes. And sometimes the Doctor is Merlin and is slaying dragons with a sword. As other dimensions just have a Dungeons and Dragons Game of Thrones-ass world. 12 says they don't exist, but 9 Rose went dragon fighting, and the 7th Doctor just sits down to talk to them sometimes. Whatever nerd dimension they came from. Dragons don't exist, Clara, you pishy bitch. Only vampires and mummies do. Idiot. My favourite take is in Vortex Butterflies, where they're just transcendental beings who watch over China. Although, this is the same story that has 10 discover the 3rd Doctor title sequence. So, take that with a pinch of salt if you're boring. The draconian excuse was always cool, don't get me wrong, but it seems kind of against the point for Doctor Who canon to restrict Doctor Who in any way. Just, there's dragons, man. And the TV stuff disputes it as well. The 7th Doctor in Ghostlight tells Light that he had failed to catalogue the dragon. And in the new series, 11, Rory and Amy went to a world of dragons whilst trying to get to Rio de Janeiro. River Song transported dragon eggs, and even the Torchwood team took out a stereotypical water dragon in Cardiff Bay. Why is the 12th Doctor suddenly too cool for it? This isn't a gotcha, by the way, it's just weird for a city show like Doctor Who to rule them out in the first place. Cut to the 1960s, where he's fighting them off with fire extinguishers. In fact, the Doctor may have been battling dragons longer than he's been battling Cybermen. It's like saying he doesn't believe in sea devils. That's us done for another one. Let's go, get out of my head!